The market right now is more like a pressure cooker. One wrong move and that's your whole capital gone. Now think about it. The headlines are screaming tariffs. We have presidents that are tweeting market moving news. What if these uncertainties are painting a clear picture for those that would take a step back and look at what's actually happening in the market? Now, if you're new, find the channel for the first time, welcome. We trade the Nasdaq over here. If you're returning, welcome back. You know what's up. Don't forget to hit that like button, turn your post notifications, and subscribe to the channel. Now, there's a high chance that the market is going to open with a gap to the top or to the bottom. Nobody knows that, but right now there is a US-China deal that is currently going on that was scheduled for the weekend right now. And we also have Mr. Jerome Powell, who gave a very cautious stance on the Fed cutting rates. He said that they're going to wait and see how the market or the economy actually reacts to these tariffs. And out of nowhere, there are whispers of a UK deal and everyone is just going crazy. Now, it does feel like the market is getting pulled in a dozen different directions at the same time, but here's the question that has absolutely been dominating my thoughts lately. Now, in the midst of all of this, if we look onto the charts here, is the market actually setting a massive predictable move that, the majority of traders are completely missing here? But only time can tell. Right now, last week we had some fantastic winning trades during that volatility on both the Nasdaq and on gold. We capitalized on some of these sharp movements that you're seeing here, but you also have to be as transparent as possible, right? The last gold trade that I had took me out completely right at the end of the week, and you know what, that loss, as frustrating as it is, it could have been completely avoided, right? And now that right there is something that, if we truly understand, it could be key to unlocking more consistent profits, right? So let's just take a look at that. The seemingly simple mistake that I made on gold here, it wasn't just about an early entry that I had or a slight misjudged support area that I was using or the bank zone that I was looking at, right? It was about overlooking the key piece of the picture, right? Overlooking between what the immediate price action was telling me and the broader market structure was also hinting at. So I was perhaps too focused on the bank zone that I had that it didn't give me enough weight to actually look at the trend line that was still very much in play. I needed a leg to form at this level. But what if that very overlooked detail that I just skipped there was a clue on gold for us for this current market weekly analysis, and it's actually showing us the larger and more significant dynamic play out across the other assets like the Nasdaq and US30, right? And even, influencing the future direction of all of the other crypto markets like Bitcoin and all of those stuff. Right now, let's get into dissecting these charts and let's forget all that constant news headlines for a moment and focus purely on price action and what it is telling us. So we'll definitely start with the gold chart, which we are on right now on the daily time frame. We can clearly see this rejection off of this level here. Now, what's the immediate move when there is uncertainty in the market, right? Almost everyone's reaction with all that global economic uncertainty and those tariff threats is to fly to the safety zone, which is buy gold, right? So that's what everyone will be looking at, and that's exactly what normally happens. Gold will just now start shooting up to the top when there is a lot of uncertainty in the market, right? That makes perfect sense. In that narrative, we can even draw these trend lines right here. Here's what we need to actually look deeper into and avoid being trapped by the obvious narrative that everyone has. Now, remember the uncompleted trend line that I mentioned earlier, the one that I actually forgot and took that initial entry. Now, if we observe this recent rejection in that context, right, it has already rejected off of that trend line and has pushed up to the top. Now, what we would expect for it is to continue pushing up with this bullish momentum, or if it comes down to break out of this trend line, then we might wait for a little drop back to this support area before anything else. Now, obviously, if it ends up then breaking out of that support area, then it will fly down to the next and the final trend line that we had drawn right over here. So in simple terms, it's just like, whilst yes, we are looking for the buying pressure, I could still see a bit of resistance that could make the market drop back, in the short term. And that's the clear technical structure that you need to wait for to play out and respect all the time, right? So gold doesn't look complicated at all. Now let us shift our focus to the Nasdaq, my all all-time favorite. Now we have seen this incredible bullish movement that the Nasdaq has been giving us, and this gap from weeks ago that never quite closed. Remember, I said that if you see the market not closing the gap the week that it opens it, or even the Monday or a few days, there is a high chance that the market would end up not closing that particular gap, because in a classic technical analysis movement, those gaps, they often act as magnets, and then they need to eventually get filled. Now the fact that this one hasn't been filled despite all of those opportunities that it had to drop down is a significant sign of the underlying bullish strength that we have on this market. Now zooming on to the daily time frame, the overall trend as usual is upwards. We even broke out of this main trend line, and we need to see a potential pullback towards this breakout here. That's not just a random area of support, right? It's a logical point where the buyers who have missed the initial breakout would be looking to enter again. Now, obviously, with all the crazy news that's happening, we still need to be very cautious. In the long term, the trend remains bullish, and that's what we're looking at. So we need to watch for a strong confirmation at this potential support zone. And if we go to the 4-hour time frame on the Nasdaq, it gives us a really clear view of the recent price action that we're having. We can see that we have more of consolidating areas that are forming here. We can trade these as ranges, right? And this breakout that we're having here does confirm the bullish momentum, and you can see that these horizontal levels that are marking up, these will now become our key areas to watch out for potential reactions, right? So the previous resistance level that was broken out of now acts as a support. If the price retraces into this zone, we will want to see strong bullish price action, probably some nice rejection candles. That could be a high probability entry point to ride the momentum to the upside. Now, if we see a break below this level, on the other hand, right, that will suggest strong selling volume. That would invalidate the setup and would suggest that we step back, probably likely to see a deeper pullback. So we need to be cautious in this time, looking out for price action. So while the overall trend is up, we need to be mindful of those short-term levels and wait for clear confirmation on the Nasdaq. But either way, I'm still bullish and looking for buying opportunities. Now let's move on to US30. This one is really interesting. It has a really interesting scenario here, and I did share a potential setup in the free signal group. As we saw, it didn't actually play out because the market had to close before it did. Now we can see a clear breakout of this trend line, and then the question now becomes, is this a genuine breakout or is a potential fake out before a larger movement in the opposite direction? US30 always does that, right? If the price respects this trend line and continues upwards after that potential retest of the breakout, that would suggest a strong bullish momentum. If we drop over to the 4-hour time frame to give us more clues about the strength of this breakout, we're looking for a strong sustained buying volume and confirmation at these potential levels. Just like the Nasdaq, simple on US30, we will still be looking for buying opportunities. So US30 might either drop as a retest or might just shoot out and break out of the zone, but either way, we still need to look out for these areas, just like we were seeing on the Nasdaq. And that's it, nothing complicated on both the Nasdaq and US30. And finally, let's touch on Bitcoin hitting those incredible all-time highs, breaching that 100,000 mark. Absolutely phenomenal, right? And yes, when we're looking at it on the surface, right, that might look very simple, a strong bullish momentum on the Bitcoin, just keep buying the dips, as someone would want to say, and that might be actually the case in the long term on Bitcoin, and we can identify potential support levels right here. However, it is still very crucial to understand what is driving this massive surge, right? Is it purely just that speculative move, or there's genuine institutional money that is holding their positions there and increased real world utility fueling this move? And the answer to that is what will be critical in determining the sustainability of this movement that we have seen on the Bitcoin. We're sitting at over 104,000, which is absolutely lovely, right? So even when it seems very straightforward in these bullish markets, being aware of the potential overextension and looking for those signs of exhaustion in the market is essential for you to be able to manage your risk. But it also doesn't mean that the market is going to be reversing at any time soon. Just because the bulls have hit the highest peak, it doesn't mean that they're ready to go back to the band, right? So it might just even keep pushing further and further up to the top. So now that's about it with the weekly analysis. If you found it helpful, don't forget to hit that like button, turn your post notifications, and subscribe to the channel. If you help me with that, it's Mintino, and I'll see you in the next video. Love you guys.